I came home to find my sister and my parents already inside my apartment, acting like they owned the place and moving their stuff in. They expected me to stay quiet and accept it. Instead, I stepped back, pulled out my phone, and made one call, to the cops. What happened next stunned every single one of them. So picture this, you come home from work one Tuesday evening, and your front door is propped open. You walk inside, and there's your sister directing people where to put boxes. Your parents are there too. Someone's already put sheets on your bed in the spare bedroom. And when you ask what's going on, your sister smiles and says, "Surprise. We're moving in." Yeah, that actually happened to me. And it gets so much worse. Because not only did they break into my apartment and change the locks, but when I called the police, my entire family turned against me. But before I tell you about that insane day, I need to explain how we got here. My name's Marcus, I'm 34 years old. My younger sister Sarah is 30. We grew up in what looked like a normal middle-class home. Our parents, David and Linda, ran a small accounting firm together. Nice house, decent neighborhood. On paper, everything looked fine. But inside that house? Completely different story. Sarah was born when I was 4, and everything changed overnight. I went from being the center of attention to background noise. Sarah needs this. Sarah wants that. Marcus can wait. Marcus will understand. Let me give you some examples of just how extreme the favoritism was. Sarah got piano lessons, painting classes, new bikes. I got hand-me-downs from cousins. When Sarah was in 9th grade, she decided public school wasn't good enough. My parents paid $15,000 a year for private school. 2 years later, when I was a junior, I found a summer engineering program that cost $300. My dad said we couldn't afford extras. Junior year, Sarah's class went to Paris. $4,000 trip. My parents made it happen. That same year, I was working at a grocery store trying to save for a used car because they said they couldn't help. College was the worst. Sarah went to private college, $42,000 a year for tuition, plus room and board. Close to $60,000 per year total. My parents took out loans, refinanced the house, cut back on everything to make it happen. When I graduated 6 months after Sarah started college, there was no conversation about them helping. I went to community college, worked night shifts at a warehouse from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., 5 nights a week. Slept 3 hours, went to class, repeated. Sarah graduated and moved back home 8 years ago. She's been living there rent-free ever since. Never held a job for more than 4 months. Always an excuse, boss was mean, commute was long, work wasn't what she expected. My mom always defended her, saying Sarah needed time to figure out what she wanted to do. 8 years later, she's still figuring it out. 3 years ago, Sarah started dating this guy named Tyler. He's 29, works in IT support, makes decent money. Seemed like a nice enough guy at first. 6 months into their relationship, Tyler moved into my parents' house. They got married about a year later in a ceremony that probably cost more than my entire college education. I'm talking open bar, live band, destination rehearsal dinner. The works. Tyler works full-time. Sarah still refuses to work. They talked about getting their own place, but it never went beyond talk. My parents' house is a small 3-bedroom ranch. With 4 adults living there, it was getting cramped. Sarah complained constantly about not having enough space, but she never took any actual steps to fix the problem. Just complained and expected someone else to solve it for her. As for me, I'd moved out when I was 20. Rented a room in a house with 3 other guys, worked 2 jobs to cover expenses. My parents never offered to help, and I never asked. We saw each other on major holidays, which was fine by me. The less time I spent hearing Sarah whine and my parents make excuses for her, the better. Then March 2020 hit, and my life fell apart. The restaurant where I worked as a line cook shut down permanently. 3 weeks later, the warehouse laid me off because orders had dried up. My roommate lost his job around the same time, and we couldn't make rent on our 2-bedroom apartment. He moved back to his hometown. I sold most of my furniture and everything else I could part with. I had my old truck that I'd bought used years ago, and I found someone selling a camper shell for $800. It needed work, but it was structurally sound. I installed it myself in a grocery store parking lot and basically converted my truck bed into a tiny living space. Then I called my parents. I asked if I could park the camper in their driveway temporarily while I looked for work and saved up for a new place. My dad said the driveway was full with their 2 cars, Sarah's car, and Tyler's truck. My mom said they didn't have room for me. I explained that I'd be in the driveway, in the camper. Not inside their house. Just the driveway. My dad said I could stay if I paid them $1,500 a month. I was unemployed. Trying to save every penny I had. I told them I couldn't afford it. My dad told me to figure out other arrangements. He also said the camper would look trashy in front of their house. Then Sarah came to the door. She actually laughed when she saw the camper. Asked if I was really planning to live in that thing like a homeless person. Tyler came out too and took pictures with his phone. Said something about it being too good not to share. I drove away and spent that first night in a mall parking lot. I couldn't sleep because I kept hearing noises outside, terrified someone was going to break in or my truck would get towed. The next few weeks, I figured out a routine. Library parking lots during the day were usually fine. Some grocery stores didn't care if you stayed overnight in the far corner of their lot. But I got told to move more times than I can count. Someone claiming to be from a neighborhood association threatened to call the cops even though I was parked on a public street in a business district. I moved to avoid trouble. I had a small battery pack that could power a light and charge my phone, but it didn't last long. I started carrying a long extension cord and plugging into outdoor outlets on buildings at night when nobody was around. I used public restrooms and showered at Planet Fitness. Spent my days applying for jobs, reading library books, and watching old DVDs on a portable player I'd had since high school. After 4 months, I got hired at a small manufacturing plant about 40 minutes from where I'd been parking. Entry-level machine operator position, but it was full-time with benefits. My new boss's name was Robert, and he and his brother owned the company. There was an old parking lot behind the facility that wasn't being used anymore. Robert noticed I was arriving an hour early for my shift and staying late most days. He asked where I lived. I told him about the camper. He said I could park it permanently in the back lot if I wanted. Let me run a power line from the building. Gave me access to a utility sink in the bathroom. In exchange, I'd spend a few hours on Sundays helping with maintenance work. It was the best situation I'd had in months. Working at that manufacturing plant changed everything for me. The facility was about 40 minutes from where I'd been parking most nights. There was an old parking lot behind the building that wasn't being used anymore, just cracked asphalt with weeds growing through it, a couple of rusted dumpsters nobody had touched in years. Robert noticed that I was showing up about an hour before my shift started and usually staying late after I clocked out. About 2 weeks into the job, he pulled me aside and asked where I was living. I hesitated, but I'd already been honest with him during the interview, so I told him. Said I was still in the camper, parking at different spots around town, trying to save up for an apartment. He was quiet for a minute, then said, "You know that back lot we're not using? You can park your truck there permanently if you want. We're not doing anything with that space anyway." I asked if he was serious. He said completely serious. Said I could run a power line from the building so I'd have electricity. Said I could use the utility sink in the men's bathroom to wash up. In exchange, he just asked if I could spend a few hours on Sunday mornings helping with maintenance work around the facility. Simple stuff, changing air filters, sweeping the warehouse floor, organizing the supply room. I would have done 20 hours of maintenance work for that arrangement. It was the best situation I'd had in months. So I moved my truck to the back lot that weekend and basically set up camp. Ran an extension cord from an outlet near the loading dock. Had consistent electricity for the first time in months. Could charge my phone, run a small fan, even power a little space heater on cold nights. The bathroom access was huge. Meant I could cancel my Planet Fitness membership and save that $10 a month. Could wash up every morning before my shift, had access to a real toilet anytime I needed it. I became friends with James, the night security guard. He worked from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and since I was often there late or came in early, we'd see each other pretty regularly. Started eating dinner together sometimes when our schedules overlapped. James was a good guy, former military, did security work to supplement his VA disability. He'd bring an extra sandwich sometimes, share it with me. Never made me feel bad about my situation. Just treated me like a normal person. The work itself was good too. I was operating machines that cut and shaped metal parts for industrial equipment. It was repetitive, but I didn't mind. Showed up on time, worked hard, learned everything they'd teach me. I worked every single hour of overtime they offered. Robert would ask if anyone wanted to stay an extra 2 hours, I'd always volunteer. Saturday overtime? I'd be there. Holiday pay? Sign me up. Learned to operate different machines. Started cross-training on other equipment so I could fill in wherever they needed me. Took on extra responsibilities, helped train new operators, did quality checks, suggested small improvements to the workflow. After about a year, Robert promoted me to shift leader. Meant I was supervising a small team of 5 operators, making sure production stayed on schedule, dealing with any issues that came up. Got a raise to $22 an hour. Still lived in the camper. Still saved every penny I could. By early this year, I'd been promoted again to production supervisor. Managing the entire floor during my shift, coordinating between different departments, working with Robert on scheduling and planning. Up to $30 an hour, plus overtime. I was making more than I'd earned at both my pre-pandemic jobs combined. And since I had basically no living expenses, no rent, no utilities, just food and gas and the occasional expense for truck maintenance, I was putting away more than half my paycheck every month. Did the math one day and realized I'd saved almost $30,000 in about 18 months. Never thought I'd see that much money in my bank account. Started seriously looking at apartments in May. Wanted something close to work, didn't need anything fancy. Just a clean, safe place that was mine. Found a small 2-bedroom apartment in an older building about 10 minutes from the plant. The building was from the 70s, kind of outdated, but well maintained. The apartment was on the 2nd floor, about 900 square feet. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, decent-sized living room, small kitchen. Rent was $2,000 a month, which seemed like a lot after living rent-free for so long. But I could afford it now. Had the savings for a deposit and first month's rent, plus enough of a cushion that I felt secure. Signed the lease in early July. Move-in date was July 15th. I didn't tell my family right away. We weren't in regular contact anyway. I hadn't talked to my parents or Sarah in over 2 years at that point. Last time I'd seen them was at a cousin's wedding where we'd barely spoken. Updated my driver's license with the new address. Started slowly buying furniture throughout August. Kept things simple and cheap, got a used couch from Facebook Marketplace for $100, a bed frame from IKEA, a small kitchen table from a garage sale. Robert actually gave me an old TV he was replacing at his house. Said I'd helped him out plenty over the past year and he wanted me to have it. I kept living pretty minimally because I'd gotten used to it. Didn't need a lot of stuff to be happy. Just needed a roof over my head, a bed to sleep in, and a space that was actually mine. Early September, I got a call from my Aunt Patricia. She's my mom's younger sister, probably the only member of my immediate family's generation that I actually liked and stayed in touch with. She called me one afternoon while I was at work. Said she'd heard from my family that I'd gotten a new place and wanted to congratulate me. I thanked her, told her a bit about the apartment, said things were going really well. Then I asked how she'd heard about it. There was a pause, and she said, "Oh, Sarah's been posting about it on Facebook. Didn't you see?" I hadn't been on Facebook in months. Probably hadn't posted anything in over a year. Barely even checked it anymore. Patricia said Sarah had made several posts about me getting an apartment, about how proud she was of her brother, how I'd struggled but persevered and now had this great place. I thought it was weird because Sarah and I literally hadn't spoken in over 2 years. But I figured maybe she was just being nice, trying to show some family support or whatever. The following week, my cousin Jessica sent me a message on Facebook. Asked for my new address so she could send me a housewarming gift. I gave her the address and thanked her. She replied saying she'd seen Sarah's posts about my new place and was really glad things had turned around for me. That's when I got curious. Logged into Facebook for the first time in forever and went to Sarah's profile. She'd made 4 posts about me in the past 3 weeks. The first one was a long caption with a photo of what looked like a nice apartment complex, definitely not my building, but whatever. She'd written about how her brother had faced incredible hardship during the pandemic, living in difficult circumstances, but had never given up. Said she'd been so worried about me but knew I had the strength to get through it. The second post was shorter, just saying she was proud of me for getting my own place and starting a new chapter. Included some inspirational quote about perseverance. The third post had a picture of her and Tyler at their wedding, and the caption mentioned how important family is, how she'd always be there for her brother no matter what, how proud she was of the man I'd become. The fourth was from just 2 days before Jessica messaged me. It said something like, "So grateful my brother has finally found stability and happiness in his new home. He deserves every bit of success coming his way." Each post had dozens of likes and comments. Relatives I barely knew commenting things like, "You're such a good sister," and "Family is everything," and "He's lucky to have you." I sat there staring at my phone, absolutely stunned. This woman who'd laughed at me when I was living in a camper. Who'd taken pictures of my truck to mock me. Who hadn't said a single word to me in over 2 years. Who'd never once checked if I was okay or offered any help. She was presenting herself on social media as my supportive, caring sister who'd been by my side through my struggles. It was completely delusional. But also kind of genius in a twisted way, because everyone who saw those posts and didn't know the real story would think she was this amazing person. I didn't comment on any of the posts. Didn't make any public correction. Just noted it as another example of Sarah creating whatever narrative made her look good, regardless of reality. But I'll admit, it bothered me. The idea that people thought she'd been supportive, that she'd been there for me, when the opposite was true. When my own family had rejected me at my lowest point and laughed at my situation. I told Patricia the real story. Told her what had actually happened when I'd asked to park in the driveway, how they'd wanted to charge me $1,500 a month, how Sarah and Tyler had mocked me. Patricia was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, "Marcus, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. That's absolutely unacceptable." I told her it was fine, it was in the past, I'd moved on. But it felt good to have at least one person know the truth. 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday morning, I left for work around 6:30 like usual. Normal day, normal shift. Stayed late to train a new operator named Kevin on one of the cutting machines. Good kid, picked things up quick, asked smart questions. By the time I finished training and wrapped up some paperwork, it was close to 7 p.m. I headed home, stopped at a drive-thru for a burger on the way because I hadn't brought lunch. Got to my apartment complex around 7:15. The parking lot has visitor spaces near the building entrance and resident spaces further back. As I was pulling into my usual spot, I noticed Tyler's car parked in one of the visitor spaces. That was weird. Tyler and I weren't friends. We'd talked maybe 5 times in the 3 years he'd been with Sarah, always at family events, always just surface-level small talk. He had no reason to be at my apartment. I figured maybe he was visiting someone else in the building. There were about 20 units total, seemed possible he knew someone else there. I walked up to my door, and that's when I saw it was propped open with a metal doorstop. My stomach dropped. First thought was that I'd been robbed. Someone had broken in, propped the door to load out my stuff, and I'd walked right into it. I could hear voices inside. Male voices talking, sounding casual, not rushed like you'd expect from burglars. I pushed the door open the rest of the way and stepped inside. And there they were. Sarah was standing in my living room, right in the middle of the space, holding her phone up like she was taking pictures of the room. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, hair in a ponytail, looking completely comfortable and at home. Tyler was on the far side of the room, placing a cardboard box against the wall. He was sweating, looked like he'd been moving heavy stuff. My dad was in the kitchen area, also setting down a box on my counter. There were bags and containers everywhere. Stacked against the walls, piled in the corner near the hallway. Must have been 15 or 20 boxes total, plus several large bags that looked like they were full of clothes. My bedroom door was open, and through it I could see that someone had put blankets and pillows on the bed in the spare room. My spare room. The one I was using for storage and as a home office. Sarah saw me first. Her face lit up with this big smile, and she lowered her phone. "Marcus. You're finally home. We were starting to wonder when you'd get here." I just stood there, frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. "We wanted to surprise you," Sarah continued, gesturing around the room like she was showing off a birthday party she'd planned. "What do you think?" I found my voice. "What is going on? Why are you in my apartment?" Sarah's smile didn't waver. "We're moving in. Isn't it great?" I looked at Tyler, at my dad, back at Sarah. "Excuse me?" "The apartment has 2 bedrooms, Sarah explained, like she was talking to a child. "And you're only using one. So it makes perfect sense for Tyler and me to use the other room. We've been so cramped at Mom and Dad's, and you have all this extra space." I could feel my heart pounding. "Who said you could move in?" "Well, nobody said we couldn't," Sarah replied, that smile finally starting to slip a little. "Come on, Marcus. It's the obvious solution. We need somewhere to live, you have room. Family helps each other out." Tyler stepped forward. "We'll pay rent, man. It's not like we're freeloading." I looked at him. "How much?" $300 a month, Sarah said quickly. "That's fair, right?" $300. My rent was $2,000 a month. "This isn't happening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to leave. All of you. Right now." Sarah's expression changed completely. The smile disappeared, replaced by this look of shock and hurt. "Marcus, don't be unreasonable. We've already started moving stuff in. Everything's half unpacked already. It doesn't make sense to move it all back out." "I don't care what makes sense to you," I said. "This is my apartment. I didn't invite you here. I don't want you here. Pack your stuff and leave." My dad finally spoke up. "Son, let's all calm down and talk about this like adults." I turned to him. "How did you even get in here?" "I didn't give anyone a key." He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "I still have connections with locksmiths in the area through the business. Called someone this afternoon, had them come out and take care of it." I stared at him. "You had someone break into my apartment?" It's not breaking in if we're family, my dad said, like that logic made any sense. We had the locksmith replace the old lock with a new one. Everyone who's supposed to be here has a key now. I walked over to the door and looked at it closely. The lock was definitely different from the one that had been there this morning. My key was still in my pocket, but it wouldn't work on this new lock. The old lock mechanism was sitting on a nearby box, the metal scratched and dented where they'd removed it. You can't just change someone's locks without permission, I said, turning back to face them. That's illegal. Oh, come on, Sarah said, her voice taking on that whiny quality I remembered from childhood. You're being so dramatic. We're family. This is what families do, they help each other out when someone needs it. You've been living rent-free at Mom and Dad's for 8 years, I shot back. I think you've gotten plenty of family help. Her eyes narrowed. That's different. I needed support after college. I was trying to find my way. You're 30 years old, Sarah. At some point, you need to actually do something instead of expecting other people to take care of you. How dare you, she said, her voice getting louder. You have no idea what I've been through. Not everyone is like you, perfectly fine with working themselves to death and living in a truck like some kind of vagrant. The words hit me like a slap. You laughed at me when I was living in that truck. You took pictures to mock me online. I was just joking around, Sarah said, waving her hand dismissively. You're so sensitive. God, Marcus, I thought you'd be happy to help us out. I've been telling everyone how proud I am of you, and this is how you act. I looked at my dad again. You need to start packing all this stuff up right now. All of you need to leave. Immediately. My dad crossed his arms. Marcus, you're making a huge mistake. This is your family. You're going to turn your back on us over something this petty? Petty? You broke into my apartment. That's when I heard a toilet flush, and my mom came walking out of the hallway bathroom. I hadn't even known she was there. Just standing in my bathroom while they had this whole conversation. She walked up to me, putting on her concerned mother expression. Honey, you need to calm down. Let's all take a deep breath and think about this logically. There's nothing logical about this, I said. You all broke into my apartment, changed the locks, and tried to move Sarah and Tyler in without asking me. How is any of that logical? Sarah and Tyler need somewhere to stay, Mom said calmly. You have extra space. It's the perfect solution. And $300 a month is a perfectly reasonable contribution for them to make. The rent is $2,000 a month, I said. Utilities are another $200. They'd be paying 15% of the actual cost. But they're family, Mom said, like that explained everything. You're supposed to help family. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. What are you doing? Sarah asked immediately, her voice going sharp. I dialed the non-emergency police number. Marcus, put the phone down, my dad said, his voice taking on a warning tone. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. Non-emergency dispatch, how can I help you? I need to report a break-in at my apartment, I said, keeping my eyes on my family the whole time. Sarah's mouth fell open. You're calling the cops on us? Tyler grabbed her arm. We should go. Please stay on the line, the dispatcher said. What's your address? I gave them my address and explained the situation. Came home from work to find family members had hired a locksmith to break into my apartment, changed the locks without permission, were attempting to move someone in without my consent. The dispatcher said an officer would be there within 25 minutes. My dad's face had gone red. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Pack up your stuff and leave, I said, spacing out each word. They finally started moving. Sarah grabbed her purse, tears streaming down her face now, making these dramatic sobbing sounds. Tyler and my dad started grabbing boxes, hauling them toward the door. My mom stood there staring at me like she didn't recognize me. "If you go through with this, we won't want anything to do with you anymore." I looked her straight in the eye. "That sounds absolutely fine to me." That seemed to finally get through to her. She followed my dad out to the parking lot. It took them about 20 minutes to load everything back into Tyler's truck and my dad's SUV. They worked in silence except for Sarah's occasional dramatic sniffling. They were pulling out of the parking lot just as the police car was pulling in. The officer parked and came up to my apartment. I met him at the door. The officer's name was Martinez. He looked to be in his late 30s, calm demeanor, professional. Asked me to walk him through what had happened. I explained everything. Came home from work, found the door propped open, family inside with all their belongings. They'd hired a locksmith to break in and change the locks without my knowledge or permission. He took notes while I talked. Asked if I had proof this was my apartment. I showed him my lease agreement. I'd scanned it into my phone right after signing it. Showed him my driver's license with this address. Showed him the old lock mechanism they'd left behind with the tool marks where they'd removed it. "Did you give anyone permission to enter your apartment today?" Officer Martinez asked. "No. Absolutely not. I left for work at 6:30 this morning, came home at 7:15 tonight. Had no idea any of this was happening until I walked through that door." "And you said they changed the locks?" "Yes. That's the old lock right there." I pointed to the mechanism on the box. "I have no idea how many copies of the new key they made. For all I know, they could come back any time." He nodded, examined the old lock, took some photos of it. "Do you know who they hired to do the locksmith work?" "My father arranged it. He said he has connections through his accounting business." I gave him my parents' names and address. "And who was in the apartment when you arrived?" "My sister Sarah, her husband Tyler, my father David, and my mother Linda." I gave him their addresses and phone numbers. Officer Martinez asked me to write out a formal statement, which I did right there on my phone while he waited. He said he'd file a report and have a detective follow up with me. Then he said something that made my blood run cold: "You need to get these locks changed again immediately. Tonight if possible. Since they hired the locksmith and paid for the work, they likely have copies of all the keys. Your apartment isn't secure right now." I hadn't even thought about that. They could come back any time. Let themselves in while I was at work, or asleep, or whenever they wanted. Officer Martinez gave me his card, said someone from the department would be in contact within a few days. He left around 8:30. I immediately called a 24-hour locksmith service. Guy said he could come out within 2 hours, charge would be $250 for the emergency service. I said that was fine, gave him the address. He showed up around 10:30, changed both locks on my door, the main deadbolt and the handle lock. Gave me 3 copies of each key. Showed me how the new locks worked, gave me the receipts and warranty information. By the time he left, it was almost midnight. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. Kept getting up to check that the door was locked, looking out the window to see if anyone's car was in the parking lot. Around 1 a.m., my phone started blowing up with text messages. The first few were from relatives I barely knew. My mom's cousin Helen. My dad's brother Richard. A second cousin named Michelle. They all said basically the same thing: "Heard what happened, can't believe you called the police on your own family, this is going to tear the family apart, Sarah and Tyler just needed help, you're being selfish and cruel." Then messages from people I actually knew. My cousin Brian said I should have just talked it out like adults instead of involving the cops. My Aunt Carol said family problems should stay in the family. Only 2 people supported me in those initial messages. My Aunt Patricia sent a text saying she was sorry this happened and she was here if I needed to talk. My cousin Michael said he'd heard Sarah's side and my side and was reserving judgment until he knew all the facts. Around 2 a.m., I saw that Sarah had posted on Facebook. Went to her profile, and sure enough, there it was. A long post about how she'd reached out to her brother for help in a time of need, but was cruelly rejected. How she thought I'd changed and grown as a person, but it was clear I was still the same selfish person I'd always been. How she and Tyler were struggling but doing their best to survive. The post already had 37 comments, all supportive. People saying they were sorry she was going through this, that she deserved better, that true family would help in times of need. I didn't respond publicly. But I did send private messages to 3 of my cousins, Jessica, Michael, and David Jr., explaining exactly what had happened. Told them about the break-in, the changed locks, the attempt to move in without permission, everything. All 3 were shocked. Jessica wrote back immediately saying that was completely different from what Sarah had said. Michael said that changed everything and he was sorry he'd doubted me. David Jr. said he'd pass the real story along to his siblings. Over the next few days, word started spreading through the family about what had actually occurred. The narrative began to shift. My Aunt Patricia commented on Sarah's Facebook post asking if it was true they'd hired someone to break into my apartment and change the locks without my permission. Sarah deleted the entire post within an hour of that comment going up. My cousin Oliver called me 3 days after the incident. Said multiple family members were now questioning Sarah's version of events. Said he'd talked to Aunt Patricia who'd talked to me, and the real story was completely different from what Sarah had been saying. I got a call from Detective Williams on the Monday after the break-in, 6 days after it happened. He asked if I wanted to press charges for breaking and entering and criminal trespass. I told him I needed to think about it. Asked what that would mean exactly. He explained that my parents could potentially face charges for arranging the illegal entry. Tyler and Sarah could face charges for criminal trespass. Depending on how the prosecutor wanted to handle it, they could be looking at fines, probation, possibly even jail time if it went to trial and they were convicted. He said I didn't have to decide right away, but I should let him know within a week or 2. I told him I'd call him back. I spent the next several days wrestling with that decision. Part of me wanted to just cut them out of my life completely and move on. Never speak to them again, never think about them again, just be done with it all. But another part of me was furious at what they'd done. They'd violated my home. My safe space. The apartment I'd worked so hard for, saved for, earned through almost 2 years of living in a truck and working every hour of overtime I could get. And they'd acted like they had every right to do it. Like I was the unreasonable one for objecting. What finally made up my mind was something my cousin Sophia told me about a week after the incident. She called and said there'd been a huge argument at my parents' house a few days earlier. That night, I got 17 texts from various family members. Most were from people I barely knew. Telling me not to involve the police because it would embarrass the family. Saying Sarah and Tyler just needed help. Calling me selfish for not sharing when I had extra space. A few relatives, including Aunt Patricia, supported me. But most seemed to think I'd overreacted. Sarah posted on Facebook that night. Said she tried to reach out to her brother for help but was turned away. Said she thought I'd changed, but it was clear I was still the same selfish person I'd always been. Said she and Tyler were struggling but doing their best. The post got dozens of supportive comments. I didn't respond publicly, but I did send a private message to 3 of my cousins explaining the full story. They were shocked when I told them about the break-in and the new locks. Over the next few days, word spread through the family about what had actually happened. The story started to shift. Aunt Patricia commented on Sarah's Facebook post asking if it was true they'd broken into my apartment without permission. Sarah deleted the entire post after that. My cousin Michael, who I'd always gotten along with, called to tell me several family members were now questioning Sarah's version of events. I got a call from a detective the following Monday. He asked if I wanted to press charges for breaking and entering. I said yes. He said he'd follow up with my parents about their involvement with the locksmith. I gave him the locksmith's contact information from the company sticker on the old lock mechanism I'd kept. And that's where things stood, until yesterday. Look, I know some of you are probably thinking I went too far. That I should have just worked it out as a family. But here's the thing, they broke into my home. They changed my locks. They tried to move someone in without my permission. And when I told them to leave, they argued with me like I was the one being unreasonable. This isn't about holding a grudge over childhood favoritism. This is about people who thought they could violate my space, my security, my home, because they've never faced consequences before. And honestly, I'm tired of being the one who's supposed to just accept it and move on. So yeah, I called the cops. And yeah, I'm pressing charges. And if that makes me the bad guy in my family's eyes, I can live with that. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one with a job, an apartment I earned myself, and boundaries that actually mean something. And I'm not apologizing for any of it. I'll keep you guys updated on what happens with the charges and the rest of this mess. Something tells me this story isn't over yet. Thanks for listening.